This is 2 Maccabees chapter 8. But Judas, who was also called Maccabeus, and his companions secretly entered the villages and summoned their kinsmen and enlisted those who had continued in the Jewish faith. And so they gathered about 6,000 men. They besought the Lord to look upon the people who were oppressed by all, and to have pity on the temple which had been profaned by ungodly men, and to have mercy on the city which was being destroyed about to be leveled to the ground, and hearken to the blood that cried out to him, and to remember also the lawless destruction of the innocent babies, and the blasphemies committed against his name, and to show his hatred of evil. And as soon as Maccabeus got his army organized, the Gentiles could not withstand him, for the wrath of the Lord had turned to mercy. Coming without warning, he would set fire to towns and villages. He captured strategic positions and put to flight not a few of the enemy. He found the nights most advantageous for such attacks, and talk of his valor spread everywhere. When Philip saw that the man was gaining ground little by little, and that he was pushing ahead with more frequent success, he wrote to Ptolemy, the governor of Colsyria and Phoenicia, for aid to the king's government. And Ptolemy promptly appointed Nicanor, the son of Patroclus, one of the king's chief friends, and sent him in command of no fewer than 20,000 Gentiles of all nations, to wipe out the whole race of Judea. He associated with him Gorgias, a general and a man of experience in military service. Nicanor determined to make up for the king the tribute due to the Romans, 2,000 talents, by selling the captured Jews into slavery. And he immediately sent to the cities on the seacoast, and invited them to buy Jewish slaves, and promising to hand over 90 slaves for a talent. Not expecting the judgment from the Almighty that was about to overtake him, word came to Judas concerning Nicanor's invasion, and when he told his companions of the arrival of the army, those who were cowardly and distrustful of God's justice ran off and got away. Others sold all their remaining property, and at the same time besought the Lord to rescue those who had been sold by the ungodly Nicanor before he ever met them, if not for their own sake, yet for the sake of the covenants made with the fathers, and because he had called them by his holy and glorious name. But Maccabeus gathered his men together to the number of 6,000, and exhorted them not to be frightened by the enemy, and not to fear the great multitude of the Gentiles, who were wickedly coming against them. Fight nobly, keeping before their eyes the lawless outrage which the Gentiles had committed against the holy place, and the torture of the divided city, and besides the overthrow of their ancestral way of life. For they trust to arms and acts of daring, he said, but we trust in the Almighty God, who is able with a single nod to strike down those who are coming against us, and even the whole world. Moreover, he told them of the times when help came to their ancestors, both the time of Sennacherib, when 185,000 perished, at the time of the battle with the Galatians that took place in Babylonia, when 8,000 in all went into the affair with the 4,000 Macedonians. And when the Macedonians were hard-pressed with the 8,000 by the help that came to them from heaven, destroyed 120,000 and took much booty. With these words he filled them with good courage, and made them ready to die for their laws and their country. And he divided his army into 4 parts. He appointed his brothers also, Simon and Joseph and Jonathan, each to command a division, putting 1,500 men under each. Besides, he appointed Eleazar to read aloud from the holy book, and gave the watchword, God's help. Then Leading the division himself, he joined battle with Nicanor, and with the Almighty as their ally, they slew more than 9,000 of the enemy, and wounded and disabled most of Nicanor's army, and forced them all to flee. They captured the money of those who had come to buy them as slaves. After pursuing them for some distance, they were obliged to return because the hour was late. For it was the day before the Sabbath, and for that reason they did not continue their pursuit. And when they had collected the arms of the enemy and stripped them of their spoils, they kept the Sabbath with great praise and thanks to the Lord who had preserved them for that day and allotted it to them as the beginning of mercy. After the Sabbath, they gave some of the spoils to those who had been tortured, and to the widows and the orphans, and distributed the rest among themselves and the children. When they had done this, they made common supplication and besought the merciful Lord to be wholly reconciled with his servants. In encounters with the forces of Timothy and Bacchides, they killed more than 20,000 of them and got possession of some exceedingly high strongholds, and they divided very much plunder, giving it to those who had been tortured, and to the orphans and the widows, and to the aged, shares equal to their own. Collecting the arms of the enemy, they stored them all carefully in strategic places and carried the rest of the spoils to Jerusalem. They killed the commander of Timothy's forces, a most unholy man, the one who had greatly troubled the Jews. While they were celebrating the victory in the city of their fathers, they burned those who had set fire to the sacred gates. Calisthenes and some others who had fled into one little house, so these received the proper recompense for their impiety. The thrice accursed Nicanor, who had brought the 1,000 merchants to buy the Jews, having been humbled with the help of the Lord by opponents whom he regarded as of the least account, took off his splendid uniform and made his way alone like a runaway slave across the country till he reached Antioch, having succeeded chiefly in the destruction of his own army. Thus he who had undertaken to secure tribute for the Romans by the capture of the people of Jerusalem proclaimed that the Jews had a defender, and that therefore the Jews were invulnerable because they followed the laws ordained by him.